This video is brought to you by Wise, our preferred choice for managing our money abroad. So today we are doing another culture shock talk, but this time we are going to do a bit of a deep dive into the reality of moving abroad, at least as it was for us.
Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning, shall we?
Yeah, the realities versus the fantasy. So
people may have the idea that you move abroad, you jump on a bike, you live in a canal house, you're sipping a cappuccino, a perfect cappuccino at a little cafe. And yeah, for some people that is the reality. For us it was very different, and yeah, we just want you to have a heads up as to some of the things that could go wrong or some of the things that can cause delays and issues as they did for us.
Plans rarely go the way the way you set them out, and we're going to tell you about ours.
Yeah. So for us, we decided to move here in 2019. We actually made the move in 2023. We had one shot at this. We were putting everything into this move. We were giving up an apartment that Mark had had for 30 years. The only job I liked in my whole job career. So we were making, we were really had to make this perfect. So I started doing as much research as I could to make sure that we landed on firm footing when we got here. The realities shifted a lot. In the Netherlands, for instance, we started researching budgets and housing in 2019, but then post-COVID, the numbers and things started to shift up. We had to keep our ear to the ground to follow these changes. So if you have, like we did, a 4-year window, a large window to plan your move, you have to constantly be updating your plans to stay with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little did we know how much things would shift economically, globally, by the time we moved. So we were kind of taken aback. We were hit with surprises, economic surprises that we didn't plan for, we didn't expect. So that's kind of the biggest challenge that we had, was dealing with those changes.
Yeah, and some of them are predictable, some are unpredictable, some you just have to be on the ground, boots on the ground to find out. And again, individual experiences, individual resources can change things dramatically. Yeah. For us, we set a budget, and the budget we doubled. So we looked at what figures people were giving us, what figures other people were reporting they had, and then we were doubling that number, thinking that was a good, safe way to play it, and we were going to fall at the low end of things. Ended up, most things ended up costing us triple. So that happened, and we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty with that. The other first consideration you have when you're moving abroad was what to do with all your stuff. So people tend to downsize, get rid of things, move with just suitcases. Some people will move their household. Yeah. For us, a hybrid approach made more sense. We both had to start over in life a couple times, and since then we had built up things we loved. I know it's just stuff, but we had like family heirlooms that we had inherited, and things that we want to pass on to my daughter as well, things that give us comfort. So we looked at if it was even possible to move them. The figures we were given from movers looked like it was cheaper to hire a mover than to go to IKEA, Kringloopwinkels, and recreate our lives, get back what we wanted. We thought, okay, let's take the dive and go for the movers.
Yeah, and these movers we chose, we realized in hindsight we didn't do enough research on movers, international movers. Okay, it's not just moving, to another state in the United States. We're moving overseas, so we had to do our research pretty carefully, and I think we did. But things changed with this moving company by the time we got to game time, which was packing up all of our stuff. And as River mentioned, we had to weed out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we got rid of about more than half of what we owned.
We sold some stuff, gave a lot of stuff away. The big point is we were really hoping that this company would take a lot better care of our stuff than they actually did.
Yeah, so we had a few antique pieces. We had, like the books. Yeah. People always ask, did you ship those? Yeah, we shipped those. And part of it too was that, I was going to come over on the draft visa as a Zézé pair. I'm an archaeologist. I didn't know if I would get to do freelance. A lot of my books back there and elsewhere are part of research and part of a library that I consult a lot. So We thought, well, we should take the books too. It was bizarre because we picked a company that had good reviews, but they used to be a fully staffed company. And what we didn't know was they became basically a broker. So he was just brokering it out to freelancers. You know, we looked at them and they were fully bonded, et cetera. Well, they weren't fully bonded by the time we booked with them. And he was hiring day workers, so gentlemen that had no real experience in moving. We were told it would have so many people, then we ended up doubling it. We were told that we should tip them this much, then they ended up tripling it and wouldn't leave unless you give it to them.
Yeah, she's bringing back memories to me. We ended up missing stuff, which...
Yeah, computer, some art, piece of furniture. You know, we saw them package it, we saw them carry it out. It never made it over here.
And a lot of stuff, you're not going to know this until you get
all the way
over
to the
here,
other side.
To the other side. And it took a while for our all of our belongings to make it overseas. And even then we had to wait to go through everything. There were several items that were just missing.
Yeah, I mean, they had several workers all working at once in every room. You can't keep eyes on everyone. It just got chaotic. So we couldn't keep eyes on all the employees and what was going on. And we didn't think we had to, honestly, you know. And then when we did get our belongings, because some of the employees were not actually trained movers, about half of our furniture, about 40% of our furniture came damaged, severely damaged, some pieces. So, you know, you're spending all this money to get things over, and then it doesn't arrive in good shape. So that was upsetting, and we didn't know because our belongings stayed in storage for a year and a half. The other thing is that the final costs for the move were triple his quote, and I had doubled his quote in our budget, but it ended up being 50% higher than our doubled budget too.
And we had to pay them before they moved over.
Yeah.
They have our stuff.
They have our stuff.
And there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So
that didn't work out so hot.
when we first started planning our move to the Netherlands, we watched a lot of videos about the process. Most of them made it look like it was seamless and very easy, but the reality of moving here without a corporate employer holding your hand and paying for your relocation is a completely different story.
Yeah, and between organizing a move with 3 cats and securing a place during a housing crisis, you could say that things don't necessarily go according to plan. So the true reality is that relocating, we had to face a few catch-22s. And the biggest hurdle right out of the bat is the BSN, which is the Dutch Citizen Service Number. So it's like a U.S. Social Security number. But the trap is you need a BSN to open a Dutch bank account. But you can't get a BSN unless you're actually physically here and can register at your local municipality.
Yeah, and to register at a municipality, you need a signed rental contract for a physical address, which means you need to rent an apartment first. But how do you pay your rent, your deposit, sign a lease, and set up utilities when you don't yet have a Dutch bank account?
Yeah, so back in the U.S., we did have a federal credit union. So when we looked into how we were going to transfer our savings over in order to pay the new rent and deposit, the credit union wanted to charge us $45 for a wire transfer fee for every single transaction. Even if I spent €5, they were going to tack that on, and 1% conversion fee.
Yeah, we're moving on a limited budget, so every single euro counts. So paying $45 plus conversion fees just to set up the basic essentials, that wasn't going to happen. This is money that's taken directly out of our food budget, our longevity here, just transferring our rent and deposit alone, what it cost us over $100 for nothing and a week delay.
Yeah, so this is where the Wise account completely saved us. So Wise allowed us to send the money internationally, and we did it at a low cost. With Wise, you always get the mid-market rate. So our bank was actually trying to inflate that, but you can always see how much the transfer will cost you before you hit send. And there's no hidden fees, no surprises. And 70% of transfers arrive in 20 seconds. So that was a game changer for an international transfer. We were able to manage our funds in advance before we ever even stepped foot in the country. So we used our Wise account to transfer our rent and deposit, and we weren't gouged by that international wire fee and these high conversion rates. And our new landlord confirmed he received the fees the same day. So if you send $20,000 in a calendar month, you'll get an automatic discount. And there's a dedicated support team that can help you with every step of your transfer.
Another cool feature, which we love, is the multi-currency account, meaning that we can hold euros and US dollars in one account, and we can convert it within seconds. We also get banking details for the US and the euros, which means that we can send and receive money.
It made the entire financial transition just seamless. And it also meant we could hit the ground running. So the day we arrived, I actually bought our permanent transit cards. I got us our eSIMs. I got us our museum cards, all with my Wise card, instead of $45, $45, $45.
Honestly, we were thrilled when Wise reached out to us to sponsor this video because we've been active users of their platform since well before we moved to the Netherlands.
Before.
And we genuinely rely on them to manage our money across borders.
So if you're planning your own move abroad, or you just want a smarter, cheaper way to send money and spend it abroad, then we highly recommend Wise. And as a bonus for our viewers, use our link in the description below, and for new customers only, Wise will give you either a €500 fee transfer or a free card. Your choice. Thanks, Wise. The other thing is traveling with pets. We have 3 cats that we had moved with. There's these 2 nuances about flying cats from the U.S. to the Netherlands. You have to have a signed document from the USDA, and it has to be within 10 days of you leaving. So we had to find a vet who could do the form and expedite it for us. And we picked close at the very beginning of those 10-day window for them to examine the cats and fill out the paperwork, get it to the USDA. But you're also then in a nervous wreck while you're trying to move, waiting for the paperwork to come back from the USDA.
Yeah, we were warned about this. So it's like, it's going to be close, but you should get the documentation that you need in time. Everything's going to be fine. So we were sweating it right down to the last minute.
Yeah. And it is scary because if they can't fly, we weren't going to fly. Our cats weren't going to go in cargo. They were going to go with us. At the time that we bought our tickets, it was the historical high price.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was post-COVID, but they hadn't yet rebound. And there was this one window where airline tickets were ridiculous. Like, we had budgeted $800 for our airline tickets. Normal tickets were about $500, $400 to $500. Yeah. This one post-COVID window, July 2023.
With the cats now.
With the cats. But our tickets were $1,600 each. Yeah. And for us to go round trip would have been $1,800. It couldn't get any cheaper than that. We had our lease ending on July 31st. Yeah. We were flying out July 31st and landing here August 1st. And we didn't have flexibility.
Our daughter was helping us move, which was when we paid for her ticket as well. So these costs were adding up for us.
Yeah, because you have to have one person per cat on board. So we flew our daughter over to take one of our cats with her. We did get the USDA paperwork the day before we left, so we were grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. They were really good about that. I mean, they knew the situation that we were in, and they worked with us. We were really grateful for that. So that was a big. I was sweating. I mean, really up until the last second.
So here we are with these tickets that cost us almost $5,000.
Yeah, which we may not be able to use.
So there were a lot of scary things going on. But the other issue we had was getting an apartment. So we had been budgeting for Maastricht, but it became obvious that we were going to have to move to the Randstad just because of the employment opportunities. We were moving on the DAFT visa. At that time, we were like an A1 to A2 on Dutch, so our Dutch wasn't very good. So we were looking at the Randstad, but also there's a housing crisis here. And it's a very real crisis, and it got far worse after COVID. When we started looking in 2019, we saw a lot of affordable housing in Maastricht, especially because it's cheaper than the Randstad. We saw a lot more availability.
Yeah, a lot of it was getting swallowed up. I mean, as we were looking, so we knew we had to get something right then. Otherwise, how are we going to, make this move? We had to do it.
Well, we had to have housing before we got here, and we had 3 cats too, and 2 of them didn't get along, so we had to have like space enough to close a door between them, kind of thing. But also, they started changing the housing laws here. They were changing the housing laws to increase the number of houses that were on the buy market, so they were making it less affordable and less beneficial for landlords to have rental properties. So we were seeing a reduction in the rental properties as well. Temporary housing, we were looking at Airbnbs, which would have gouged us for like $4,000 or $5,000 or euros a month, and then we'd have to keep moving with the 3 cats. It was pretty complicated.
Yeah, and involving the process of getting an apartment. We'll talk about the obstacles as far as that goes, but how do you get an apartment from overseas without actually being there to shop around for an apartment, have them meet you? We get into all sorts of different obstacles as far as doing that goes.
Yeah, and so that was another issue. We got in. We were shocked we found an apartment.
Yeah.
We did find an apartment. We didn't pick what city. You know, we would have loved to have lived in Leiden, but you take the apartment that's given to you, basically, as far as how we were concerned. So we would have moved anywhere in the Randstad so long as there was an apartment for us. The apartment came to us in Schiedam.
Yep.
And we liked Schiedam, so that worked out good.
And he specifically worked with expats. The apartment that we ended up getting, the landlord who worked with us specifically worked with expats. So we were able to communicate overseas and be able to get this apartment before we moved, which was great.
But it was 3 times our rental budget. It was very expensive because it was expat temporary housing. We did sign a 2-year lease, and we're glad we did, because the month we landed here, the law changed so that would have been impossible before. The housing we got wasn't that cute, nice home. For the price, what we had was former student housing, so there was no living room. Every room was a bedroom.
Yeah.
So we had 3 beds, no living room.
It's like three dorm rooms. But we, it was
a lot of space.
Yeah, we were going to be moving anyway, so it was like, okay, we can make this work. We had to keep our stuff in storage. There was no way that we could move our stuff in. This was a furnished place.
Yeah,
so,
and he also wouldn't allow us to move our belongings in.
Right.
So, and he was charging us a monthly rent on the furniture,
Yeah.
which was old IKEA furniture that was very broken up. You could tell it was student housing before, because the condition. We had to put covers on all of the furniture because it was really bad. There was 2 sofas.
We didn't entertain much.
No,
Yeah.
no. There were 2 sofas that they had shoved into 2 of the bedrooms, but that wasn't. They weren't good looking at all. It wasn't homey, that was the thing. And we thought, that's fine, it's temporary. We were grateful to have housing, especially when we had no jobs and 3 cats, and it's a housing crisis. We thought ourselves the luckiest people in the world, and we were. When we landed here, we thought 6 months we'll have a permanent home. So our stuff will be in storage just for 6 months. We'll find something that's in our price range. It took us a year and a half to find a place.
Yeah.
And so here we are paying expat housing prices that just keep dwindling our money down for, a place that's not home while paying storage. But, it's a housing crisis. What are you going to do?
When things were, the apartment market, it literally just dissolved, in front of us. So our choices were very limited because A, I didn't have a job yet. B, everything was completely being swallowed up by other people that were coming into the Netherlands. And we weren't sure what our prospects were at that point.
I applied for a couple thousand apartments, and I was on it all around the clock. It was a full-time job. We didn't get 1 showing out of it. We ended up using Steckies, and with Steckies, within 2.5 months, we got 6 showings. Steckies gives you announcements as soon as an ad for an apartment hits the internet, and you have a pre-formed form with all of your documentation that you can immediately shoot out to get you in there quicker, because the way the law is here is it's sort of first come first serve for anyone who meets the criteria for those apartments. Because of our budget, we were looking at homes that were in high demand from most people. So we were looking at social housing mid-range, low range of the free market. So those are the high competitive ones everyone wants. If you come in and you have a higher budget for rent, then you're going to find something a lot quicker because there's less demand for those. We've heard of people that come and within a matter of weeks have an apartment because they could afford $2,500 a month, $3,000 a month. So we couldn't. So for us, we were competing with what felt like all of the Netherlands for these places. And even then you feel guilty when you get one because you know what everyone's going through.
It's a very scary situation too, because she really was literally working on it. I was looking for a job. She was working on getting the housing situation straightened out. And there was nothing. She'd send out. We couldn't get a viewing. Just because everybody seemed to be looking for an apartment.
Well, we just weren't quick enough because as soon as I saw it, so did a couple hundred other people.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. But so when we came here, we thought 6 months to find an apartment, 4 to 5 months for Mark to find employment. It ended up taking Mark 9 months to find employment, and that was a part-time job.
Yeah, started up working a part-time job, and then when I got a permanent, it wasn't a permanent job, it was a job with a temporary contract, and that was at minimum wage. But I mean, for a while, it was shaky to even keep that job. It was a year contract, and that's another thing. The contracts over here, it's very rare to find something, I mean, at least as far as expats go. If you're looking for a job,
English-speaking
jobs,
lower
yeah.
market range, not like executive jobs or something like that.
Right. It's difficult to find a job, but it's difficult to find a job with a permanent contract. That's kind of what you're looking for, but that's not what's offered at first.
At least with the American companies. Like the two jobs that did come our way were both American companies, and they tend to do more temporary contracts.
Yeah.
So, and also trying to find housing when you either have no job or a temporary contract is really hard too. A lot of the places want to see a permanent contract. We still don't have a permanent contract. Mark's had 3 jobs here. None of them offered permanent contracts.
And it seems to be rare that they're going to offer you a permanent contract. So that's the other catch-22 now. But at least at the time, it was so difficult to get a viewing because I had a job for a temporary contract.
So we were dealing with that, but then also Mark had the part-time job, which slowed the bleeding. He got his first full-time job exactly on the 1-year anniversary of us being here.
Yeah.
So it took a year to get one. They gave him a temporary contract.
Temporary contract, which was for 7 months. And I was hoping, praying that they were going to renew it, and they did. Once that 1-year contract ended, that was it, because they were not doing well, and they were entering a lot of temporary contracts. So luckily, I was able to get a job immediately after that contract ended with another American company, but also for another temporary contract for another year. That's the current job I have now. So it's, I haven't yet seen, in the job market, people offering permanent contracts, at least to people that don't speak fluent Dutch yet.
Things shift in the market. For instance, Mark's first one waited a year to get that, were relieved when they renewed his temporary contract because of the world tariffs that the U.S. had put on the Netherlands. Even though they were an American company, they were selling to other countries, so they had to reduce their workforce, and anyone with a temporary contract was not renewed. We worked a year to get this contract, only a temporary contract, and then it's up and we have to go out and find another one. We were very lucky because we thought, we can't have another year of looking. It would sink us, but Mark was able to get another job in a similar field right away.
Yeah, very grateful for that.
Oh, so, gosh, it was scary times. So we were really fortunate to finally get this apartment, which we're so grateful for, in our budget. So we finally got this apartment, and then you have to figure in all the extra expenses for that. So you don't it's not move-in ready here. So you have to get lights, you have to get floors, you have to get appliances.
The floors.
At least we did. So you have to add in those expenses as well. Plus, you don't have a lot of storage solutions sometimes. Like this apartment we moved into had very little storage, very small kitchen, so you didn't have any workspace for the kitchen. No closets, of course, because they don't really have a lot of closets unless they're like new builds. So, and this is an older apartment, so we were going to have to invest in places to put things, and so you gotta account for those too. You don't just move in and start decorating.
You come up with creative solutions too.
Yeah.
Over a period, you discover how resourceful you can be in your imagination too, and dealing with a lot of the things that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Which we did. We were forced to do, and we're glad we were able to do that. So, you get creative. So,
well, and with our budget too, we were seeing apartments which we were applying and accepting. We just didn't get them, and I'm glad we didn't. We fell in a much better spot, but there were some that were just oppressive, and I'm like, but we needed housing. So it was like, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And everyone else said, yes, they'll take it, and then they picked from there, and some of them were like, you had to buy a boiler. One had never updated the electrical. They expected you to do that as the tenant. Like some of the places were kind of like slumlords. Like they really wanted you to improve their property on their behalf in order to live there.
Depressing just to visit them.
They were pretty bad, some of them, and some of them were just basically, we were looking at one big room that we could live in that shared a kitchen, and we were looking at places where we would have had to keep our stuff in storage because there was, we were looking at studios even, just anything at all, so we didn't end up on the street when our temporary lease ran out. So yeah, you have to compromise. Or at least we did. We had to compromise. You might be able to afford your dream. For us, it was we had to downsize the dream. We ended up landing on our feet, though, and we're grateful for that. But going through it, we were like, we can live with anything.
We were literally coming up to the last couple of months, really, and we found it. So we were very grateful.
And we know how fortunate we are. We know there's immigrants that have a much worse time than us. We know, we're fortunate. We're not seeking asylum. We feel very fortunate. We don't want anyone thinking we're not. But so there's challenges, there's adventures, there's beauty of living in another country, learning another culture, another language. But things never go as planned.
No.
We didn't have a house to sell. We didn't have a car to sell. You come over on a limited budget. It's going to take time. No matter how hard things got, no matter how scary things got, we definitely felt like for us, we made the right decision.
Yeah, it was worth it. It was definitely worth the challenges that we faced. So we're proud to be here, and we're proud to share this with you guys.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us for another Culture Shock Talk, and let us know in the comments if you have some crazy immigrant stories. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Never know how to say goodbye to you guys. Totsies.
Thanks again to Wise for sponsoring this video. And don't forget to sign up using our link in the description to get either a €500 fee-free transfer or a free card for new customers only.